Hey everyone, Itay Manero here, and in this video, I'm going to show you the ultimate tool for creating comics in Procreate. So let's jump right into it. What you're seeing here is not a brand new product. It's a massive update to my ultimate dynamic comic panels, balloons, and sound effects toolkit for Procreate, completely redesigned and more powerful than ever. Over the last 2 years, I've rebuilt this toolkit from the ground up to make it faster, more flexible, and much more complete. The previous version already included more than 300 brushes. With this new update, it has been renamed simply the Comic Toolkit, and it now includes over 1,000 brushes, featuring a completely redesigned panel system, more than 500 balloon brushes, more than 500 hand-drawn sound effects, and a workflow that has been refined in every possible way. If you already owned the previous version, you can update it for free. But I highly recommend sticking around, because in this video, I'm going to show you how everything works now, the new workflows, and the improvements that make it much faster and more efficient to use. Many things still work the same way as before, but others have changed to simplify the process. And this video is designed to be the ultimate guide to understanding the toolkit from scratch. And if this is your first time seeing it, stick around, because here you'll learn how to create the structure of your comic pages, panels, balloons, and sound effects, so you can focus on drawing and telling your stories. By the way, you can find the Comic Toolkit on my Gumroad page, both the full version and a free sample version. You'll find the link in the description of this video. Now, let's take a look at everything included in the Comic Toolkit and how it can speed up your workflow when creating comic pages in Procreate. The Comic Toolkit is made up of 4 elements: panels, balloons, tails, which are the little pointers that connect balloons to the character who's speaking, and sound effects. But before we take a look at how each of them works, here's the first new feature for those of you who already owned the previous version. Now, when you download the toolkit, you'll see that it comes as a single file, and once you install it in Procreate, it becomes its own dedicated brush library. To install it, simply open the Files app next to Procreate in split view and drag the file the Comic Toolkit.brush library onto any canvas inside Procreate. Once you've done that, to find the Comic Toolkit, you just need to tap here at the top, on the name of the current library. Then tap back to Libraries, and you'll see all the brush libraries you have installed. That's where you'll find the Comic Toolkit if you installed it correctly. Just tap it to open it. The fact that the Comic Toolkit is now its own brush library inside Procreate allowed me to organize all the elements into sets and categories in a much more coherent way, so you can browse through them and find what you're looking for much faster and more easily. Throughout this video, we'll take a look at what each set contains and how to use the different tools. Easy panels. Those of you who used the previous version of the toolkit may remember that it required working with 9 different brushes and quite a bit of trial and error in order to create the panels of your comic page. Well, you can forget about all that, because I've perfected the method. The first set you'll find inside the Comic Toolkit library is Easy Panels. This single brush you see here, also called Easy Panels, is the only brush you'll need to quickly draw the panels for your comic page. For this demonstration, I prepared a canvas that is 8.25 by 11 inches at 300 dpi. I've set the background to a neutral color so you can clearly see what I'm doing. I'm going to create a new layer and name it Panels. This is the layer where we'll divide the page into panels. The fastest and most reliable way to make sure that the page margins and panel divisions stay perfectly straight is by enabling a drawing guide in Procreate. Make sure you have 2D grid enabled and not any of the other guides. If a different one is selected, you can tap Edit Drawing Guide and choose the 2D grid from the menu below. Then, for our brush strokes to follow the guide we've activated, we also need to enable it on the layer we're using. To do that, tap the selected layer again, and in the layer options, enable Drawing Assist. As you can see, now I can only draw horizontal or vertical strokes, which is exactly what we want for creating our panels. Once that's done, we can safely turn off the drawing guide in the Actions menu, because as long as Drawing Assist remains enabled on the layer, it will continue working, just without the grid being visible all the time. The next thing we need to keep in mind is that all the brushes in this toolkit use the primary and secondary colors from the color wheel. For example, when creating panels, if we want the page background to be white and the panel outlines to be black, which is the most common setup in comics, we need to set black as the primary color and white as the secondary color. These two squares here represent the primary and secondary colors. By tapping each one, you can choose the color you want. The primary color will be used for the panel outlines, which is why we set it to black. The secondary color will be used for the page background, which is why we set it to white. One important thing to keep in mind is that the outline color must be selected when using the brush. In this case, that means selecting the black square. You'll know it's selected because that's the color shown in the circle in the top right corner. Once that's set, and with the Easy Panels brush selected, if you look at the brush size slider, you'll notice two marks. These marks allow you to save two different brush sizes. The top mark is used for drawing the outer margins of the page. The bottom mark is used for dividing the page into panels. Here's a little trick that allows you to draw perfectly even page margins very quickly. Simply place the tip of the Apple Pencil right along the edge of the canvas, exactly where this arrow is pointing. That gives us the left margin. Now repeat the same gesture on the right side, then repeat it along the top edge, and finally along the bottom edge. And that's it. Our page margins are done. Now let's divide the page into panels. To do that, select the lower mark on the brush size slider and start drawing horizontal and vertical strokes wherever you want. The divisions will automatically connect with the page margins, forming the different panels. Since the panels are on their own layer, we can draw our artwork on a layer below them without interfering with the panel borders. The great thing is that creating panels with this brush and method is so fast that you can experiment with many different page layouts before choosing the one you like. These examples are just a few possibilities, but the options are truly endless. And here's something even cooler. If you disable Drawing Assist after creating the margins, you can draw panels not only horizontally and vertically, but also diagonally. Just draw a line freehand and hold the Apple Pencil still at the end of the stroke without lifting it from the screen. Procreate will automatically convert it into a perfectly straight line that you can adjust. Comic pages with diagonal panels often look very dynamic. You can also draw panels freehand with curves or even create completely circular panels. Here's another useful trick. If all the pages in your comic will have the same margins, there's no need to redraw them every time. You can create the margins once, keep that document saved as a template in the Procreate gallery, and then simply duplicate it whenever you need a new page. Doing this will save time and allow you to start dividing the page into panels immediately. You might be wondering what happens if you want custom margin sizes or panel divisions. It's very simple. I recommend duplicating the original brush so you always have the default version available. In the duplicated brush, you can remove the brush size marks by tapping the minus icon in the preview. Then choose whatever brush size you like and save it by tapping the plus icon in the same window. You can do the same for the panel division size. Here you can see an example page with different margin sizes and panel divisions. The final thing you should know about creating panels with this toolkit is that, while most comics typically use white page backgrounds and black panel borders, that's not mandatory. If you change the primary and secondary colors in the color wheel, you can experiment with different color combinations for your panels and page backgrounds to give your comics a unique look. Pretty cool, right? balloons and tails. To show you how balloons and tails work, I've prepared this page with my turtle character inside a couple of panels. Since this new update of the Comic Toolkit includes more than 500 balloons, I've organized them into 5 different sets to make them easier to navigate. The first set contains standard balloons, which are the most traditional and commonly used ones, simply for when characters are speaking normally. The second set contains behavior balloons. Here you'll find balloons for when a character is whispering, shouting, thinking, speaking through a radio or a phone, and so on. The third set contains special balloons. Here you'll find a wide variety of balloons that you can use creatively for characters such as monsters, aliens, vampires, ghosts, mutants, robots, fire or ice creatures, forest shamans, and many more. The fourth set contains narration boxes. These are the typical rectangular boxes used in comics for narration, whether it's an omniscient narrator or narration coming from one of the characters within the story. There are several styles to adapt to different kinds of comics, such as humor, children's comics, adventure stories, science fiction, and so on. And the fifth set contains some balloons and narration boxes that work especially well for Japanese comics or manga. All the balloon types within each set include a small thumbnail explaining the recommended use for that particular balloon, along with a preview showing how the balloon will look once you place it on the canvas. Some balloons also include an additional pro tip with suggestions on how to use them. Now let's see how they work. For now, I've selected one of the balloons from the standard set called Super Ellipse. First of all, everything we discussed earlier about the primary and secondary colors in the color wheel also applies to balloons and tails. If we want the balloon outline to be black and the fill to be white, we simply set the primary color to black and the secondary color to white. And to make sure the colors are applied in the correct order, the primary color must be selected, which in this case is the black square. Now all we have to do is tap anywhere on the canvas with the Apple Pencil to place the balloon. Next, we need to add the tail. To do that, I'm selecting the standard round brush from the balloon tail set. Don't worry, we'll take a closer look at this set in a moment. Important. In order to attach the tail to the balloon, both must be on the same layer. The key to drawing tails with a sharp tip is to release the stroke with a bit of momentum at the end, almost like throwing a small ball. It's very easy, although it might take a little bit of practice at first. To add the tail, simply start the stroke from inside the balloon and draw outward, and both shapes will automatically merge together. As you can see, you can direct the tip of the tail in any direction you want, which makes it perfect for pointing the dialogue toward the speaking character. Now that you understand the basics, let's explore everything you can do with the balloons and tails in this toolkit. To begin with, the same balloon can be used at different sizes simply by changing the brush size. The great thing about this is that the outline thickness always stays the same, no matter how large or small the balloon is. Each balloon type or category includes 10 different variations. In other words, they all share the same visual style, but their proportions gradually change, from taller vertical balloons to wider horizontal ones. This not only adds variety and visual dynamism, but also gives you more flexibility when fitting the balloons to the text in your comics. I've prepared these 10 dialogue examples so you can see that depending on the length and layout of the text, some balloon shapes work better than others and result in a more polished and professional look. In the 2 panels above, with the turtle character, I've also prepared some example dialogues. When placing balloons, there are several ways to do it. You can place them on a layer below the panels, like this, so the panels overlap the balloons. As you can see in the first panel, it's also possible to connect multiple balloons together to create a more dynamic rhythm in certain dialogues. And don't be afraid to use the selection tool to grab any balloon and adjust its position after placing it if necessary. You can also adjust the position of the text inside the balloon to fine-tune the layout. Another option is to place the balloons on a layer above the panels, so the balloons overlap the panels instead. And a third option is to place the balloons on the same layer as the panels. This will cause the balloons to merge with the panels wherever they touch. This can create a very interesting visual effect, but keep in mind that once they are merged, you won't be able to select and move those balloons independently. If needed, you can always duplicate the panel layer first before adding the balloons as a backup. By the way, tail brushes are not only useful for pointing toward the character who is speaking, you can also use them to connect balloons together like this, which is something that appears frequently in many modern comics. Just like we discussed earlier with panels, balloons don't have to be white with black outlines. You can change their colors by adjusting the primary and secondary colors in the color wheel. You could do this for all your characters, or only for certain ones, or maybe only for specific balloons. Your creativity is the only limit. Now let's talk a bit about the tail brushes included in this toolkit. Those of you familiar with the previous version might remember that it included 10 tail brushes. Well, this update includes no less than 30 different ones. I've placed several balloons on the page and we'll take a quick look at some of these tails. As you can see, each brush inside the balloon tail set includes a thumbnail explaining its intended use, along with a preview showing how the tail looks on the canvas. We'll start with standard round, which we already used earlier. This is the all-purpose tail, and you could use it for almost every dialogue in your comics if you wanted. We'll skip narrow tip since it's very similar, just with a slightly sharper point. Cartoon is a rounded tail that works great for children's comics or for creating a friendly tone. Square has a more angular look, and it works really well for zigzag tails. Super square doesn't end in a sharp point. It can be used for robots or science fiction comics, for example, or simply as a stylistic choice if you like the look. Super round can also be an interesting stylistic option if you want to give your comics a unique touch. And as you can see, there are many more tails you can explore and even find your own uses for beyond the suggested ones. The great thing about having so many balloon and tail styles is that you can mix and match them however you like. As I mentioned earlier, in addition to standard balloons, the toolkit also includes hand-drawn balloons, polygonal balloons, double outline balloons, where you can add an extra color accent, whisper balloons, multiple styles for characters shouting at different intensities, balloons for romantic dialogue, and much more. There's a lot to explore. The more than 500 balloons and 30 tails included in this toolkit allow for an almost endless number of combinations. Your comics are going to look amazing. Sound effects. The original version of this toolkit included 100 predefined sound effects. That might sound like a generous amount, but I always felt that for a tool like this to be truly useful, it needed many more. That's why this update includes more than 500 hand-drawn sound effects, ready to be used in your comics. To make navigation easier and help you quickly find the sound effect you're looking for, I've organized all the sound effect brushes alphabetically, grouped into sets of 3 letters at a time. Within each set, the sound effects are also arranged alphabetically. So in the first set, you'll find all the sound effects that start with A, B, and C, and so on throughout the rest of the alphabet. I've also included a set of special visual effects and another set of brushes that allow you to draw your own custom sound effects. let's take a look at what these brushes can do. Just like the panel brushes and the balloon and tail brushes, the sound effect brushes are also composed of an outline and a fill. You can change the color of both simply by adjusting the primary and secondary colors in the color wheel, just like we discussed earlier. Here you can see how I place this sound effect using different color combinations. If you place more than one sound effect on the same layer, they will merge together, just like balloons and panels do. This can be a stylistic choice in your comic. Alternatively, you can place them on separate layers so they overlap each other. You can also change the angle of the sound effects simply by rotating the canvas before stamping the brush onto the page. And just like with balloons, you can place sound effects above or below the panel layer, or let them merge with the panels by placing them on the same layer. One thing I really wanted to include in this update was multiple variations of the most commonly used sound effects. For example, explosions appear very frequently in many comics, and they often have different levels of intensity. In the previous version of this toolkit, it felt a bit limiting that if you needed an explosion sound effect, you only had one design available. With this update, there are 8 different explosion designs, so you can choose the one that best fits the action happening in your panel. Explosions are just one example. I made a conscious effort to include multiple designs for many of the most commonly used sound effects, so whenever possible, you'll have more than one option to choose from. I'm going to place a few random sound effects using different color combinations so you can see the variety of designs available and how easy it is to find the sound effect you need. Now let's take a look at the special effects set. These brushes contain visual elements that frequently appear in comics alongside sound effects and can be very useful. Here you'll find different types of energy bursts, various exclamation marks, a wide variety of question marks, different musical note designs, some light bulb icons to show when a character has a brilliant idea, some skull designs, which can be used to express that a character is metaphorically dead inside, or literally dead, or to indicate that a potion is toxic or poisonous, and some symbols used to represent cursing or swearing. Finally, the custom sound effects set contains a small collection of brushes that allow you to draw your own sound effects quickly and easily. Simply select one of the brushes from this set, choose a color for the outline and another for the fill using the primary and secondary colors in the color wheel, and draw your custom sound effect. Each brush gives you a different stroke style, so feel free to experiment. To wrap things up, let's add a couple of sound effects to the turtle panels. And I'll show you this carousel, so you can see the huge variety of sound effects included in the Comic Toolkit, all designed to help bring your comics to life and give them a more professional look. And that's it. I hope this tour of the new and improved Comic Toolkit for Procreate has been helpful, and that you enjoy creating comics and telling your stories with it. Remember that if you already owned the previous version, you can update it for free. And if this is your first time discovering the toolkit, you can find it on my Gumroad page through the link in the description, where you'll also find a free sample version so you can try some of its features with no commitment. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll be happy to help. Alright, thank you for watching and see you next time.